everybody. Hi everyone. This is so fun. All my friends are here. Everyone. All right. I know we're gonna have a great audience, excellent listeners. I know you guys can do it. My name is Sara Baroud. I live here in Holliston. I have 2 awesome kids that are here and a great husband who's here. And this has been just an idea that I've had rumbling around for a couple of years. I've been a lifelong fan of the Olympics, as many of us have, and am always inspired by the games. And this all started because I got to know Bethany about 5 or so years ago. We both worked with supporting moms in different ways, in different parts of their motherhood journey. And then I found out she was an Olympian, and I thought, you need to lead with that wherever you go. So we got to know each other, and then I found out that Nicole was my neighbor. And I thought, holy cow, we need to do something to highlight these awesome athletes and women. And then I got connected to Gevvie through some friends, so here we are. So thank you all for being here today. I think some more people will trickle in, and that's great. The format that we have today is that we are going to have hear from each of the Olympians, hear their journeys. We have pictures that you guys will be able to see, hear their stories. They're each going to answer some questions that are already prepared. And then hopefully we have time for some questions from the audience. So think about some questions that you all might have for these awesome athletes as we go. Then after that, each of the athletes is going to be at a table where you can get their autographs if you're interested and ask them some more questions. We also have a place that you can take pictures, maybe with their jacket and things like that. There's also some coloring pages there too. If you need a bathroom, there's one bathroom through these doors. There's also bathrooms downstairs on the other end of Town Hall. All right, so we're gonna go through the slides, and Bethany is going to start us off. This is Bethany, Hart, Gerry.
Hold it. He's holding it better. Okay, I feel very professional. Hi. What's that? No, that's okay, I can do it. Thank you though, appreciate it. Teamwork makes the dream work. Hi guys, I'm Bethany. I live here in Holliston. I live here with my husband, Tom. I have 2 kids, a 9-year-old Shaler and 11-year-old son, Riker. They're 6th graders and 4th grader here in Holliston. So for my Olympic journey, I competed at the Olympics in 2006 in Torino, Italy, in the sport of bobsled. So that was 20 years ago, which I can't even believe. And the Olympics, does anybody know where the Olympics were this year? They were, anybody else? They were in Milan and Cortina, and where was the other? They were in a lot of places in Italy. So traveling back to Italy this year. So the outcome of my event. So in the sport of bobsledding, women compete in the 2-person bobsled. So there's a driver and there's a brake person. I was the brake person. So I would push the sled for 6 seconds and then jump in, put my head down, and just hope to make it to the end. But our drivers were awesome. And then at the very end, you pull the brakes. Only at the end, that's a very important detail. You do not pull them at any other time, okay? So there's like 2 little handles and you pull it up, and then there's a claw that comes down and it scrapes the ice, so you slow down. It's wicked cool, but only at the end. So I was brakeman. So the interesting part of my journey is I was an alternate on the 2006 Olympic team. And for a long time, that kind of felt hard because I knew that I probably wasn't gonna get a chance to race, and it felt like I was just an extra part of the team. But throughout this journey into the Olympics, one of the athletes was injured, one of the brakemen. So I got to train with the driver for the 3 weeks leading up to the Olympic Games, and then about 72 hours before, they have to announce officially the athletes that will be training and competing. I remember sitting in the room with my teammates, who were my best friends at the time, and asking that brakeman who was injured, are you going to be able to compete? And I've never felt more conflicted in a moment of time. Wanting my turn to race, but also, you know, she's my teammate, my friend. She trained all season as well, and she ultimately decided she was able to race, and they ended up winning a silver medal. She very graciously, months later, sent me a very nice note saying that that medal was just as much mine as it was hers. And that meant a lot, because in the sport of bobsled, alternates don't get medals like they do in other sports. So that was how the outcome of that event went. The US came in second, they won a silver medal. It was an awesome experience to be part of the medal ceremony and celebrate that accomplishment with my teammates. When did I know I wanted to be an Olympian? So I actually didn't have the Olympic dream until college. I didn't think I had the ability. I didn't think I had the athletic ability to compete at that level. But I loved working hard. I loved to see what my body was capable of and pushing myself to be the best, no matter what sport that I was doing. And in college, I was a hammer thrower. Has anybody seen a hammer throw before? It's a shot put on the end of a wire, and you spin around and then you throw it into a field. It's wicked cool. Yeah. So it's a track and field event, so that was my sport in college. I ended up becoming a 2-time All-American. I walked onto the track team at UConn. I was not recruited, but ended up earning that achievement and qualified for the Olympic trials in the year 2000. It was the first year women ever competed in the hammer throw in the Olympics. I ended up coming in 5th at that event and realizing, like, oh my gosh, could I train to be an Olympian? Like, this is kind of cool. So I went on to continue competing. I had a training partner in Connecticut. She introduced me. I was an athletic trainer, so helping athletes with injuries. She introduced me to a physical therapist who was trying to make the medical staff. And he was like, hey, I think you'd be good at pushing bobsleds. Now, women didn't compete in the sport of bobsledding in the Olympics until 2002, so you didn't hear much about that sport either. It's a lot about power and strength and speed in your legs, and I was like, sure, I'll try it. So I went up to Lake Placid, did some sprinting and lifting and testing scores, and learned how to push a sled on wheels, and ended up going on World Cup tour that year. So that was when my Olympic dream was born. The hardest obstacle I had to overcome to get there was my self-doubt. I didn't believe in myself. I had a lot of people believe in me before I believed in myself, that I had that athletic ability to be able to compete at that level. And that's what got me through those tough times. Sacrifices. We had a lot of similar thoughts and feelings on this. You do sacrifice a lot. Training to be an Olympic athlete, I mean, you're training 20, 30 plus hours a week. I also worked. I had a full-time job my entire Olympic training career to make ends meet, because being an Olympian doesn't pay the bills. So there was a lot of financial hardship, missed a lot of family events, but when you have a supportive team pushing you and rallying around you, they understand that. And my coolest pinch me moment, if I had to pick one, would be the opening ceremonies. That's one of the coolest. I think for me it was that moment when you're like, I did it, I made it. And walking out with all the best athletes in the whole entire world in your Olympic gear. This was our vest that went underneath our jacket in opening ceremonies, and I actually brought my Olympic opening ceremonies jacket with me today. So that was one of the best moments, to walk out in front of the world, being one of the best athletes in the world. So active in my sports since the Olympics. It's really hard to find a bobsled track around here. So unfortunately, I've not stuck with bobsled since. I stay involved in other ways. They have different committees, an alumni committee. I try to get up to Lake Placid and watch other athletes. That's my daughter and my husband. And one of my other kids is competing in a ninja competition today, so he's not here. So it's been tough to stay involved in my sports, but I'm still very active in the fitness world. We own a strength and conditioning studio, so helping to inspire other people to find their inner athlete. Piece of advice I would give younger athletes. So I have these 4 pillars that I like to talk about. We've got grit. Does anybody know what grit is? Anybody? It's practicing your sport or playing your instrument even when you're tired, or even when it's raining outside. Pushing through. Discipline. Discipline is, how many of you guys brush your teeth? Boy, I hope I would see more hands raised than that. Do you brush your teeth because you want to, or because you know you sort of need to? You know you need to. Yeah, exactly. That's discipline. Showing up even if you don't want to, but you know that you should, because it's good for your body. Perseverance. How many of you are like built Legos or a tower and it fell over? Or you did an art project and then your vision didn't happen and like you made a mistake and there's like that extra paint blot and then you want to just throw it all away and quit and give up? Perseverance is making a cloud out of that ink blot. It's like making something out of your mistake or learning from your mistake or rebuilding the tower and trying to figure out a different way to do it so that it works. That's perseverance, pushing through those hard times. And then dedication. Dedication is like your why. Like, why are you doing what you're doing? Why are you working so hard to do that? Being a fan of your own dream. Do any of you garden, plant seeds? Have you ever planted a seed? It takes a while to see what happens, right? But you gotta water it every day. You gotta make sure it gets some sunshine. And you just gotta wait. Waiting. Some athletes, we train for 4 years before it's determined whether we make an Olympic team. So you just have to work hard every day and keep hoping and working hard till that one day when you know if you're an Olympian or not. Something that would surprise us about the Olympics, I don't know about you guys, but McDonald's was the most popular. They did? Wow. Okay, so back 20 years ago, McDonald's was the most favorite place for athletes to eat in the Olympic Village. The food in the Olympic Village was not delicious in our village. No, we did not. In Italy, we did not have good food. Thank you for listening to my story.
Thank you, Bethany. If you guys have questions, we're going to take questions at the end, okay? So remember those questions. Next up, we have Nicole, Teter, Downin.
First of all, Sara, thank you for putting this together. I'm not much of a speaker, but and then following Bethany, who's a wonderful speaker, is fun to do. It's nice to see a bunch of familiar faces. A lot of you kids I recognize in town. I was in 2 Olympics for running track and field. Who here likes to run? Me. Okay, look at that. So I am the boys track coach here in Holliston. So maybe in a couple years, I'll get to coach some of you. Wouldn't that be fun? So my outcome for the 2 Olympics I was in 2004, it was in Athens, Greece, and I was having the absolute best year of my life for running, and I made it to the semifinals, which is the second round of 3 for the Olympics. And it's one of those moments in my life that I will kind of always remember, because during the race, I thought to myself, don't let this girl pass me. And when you think too long about an activity that you're in, usually the outcome is not going to be positive, because you can't think about overthink what you're trying to do in the moment. So I made it. I think I was 2 spots away from making the final, but that still was one of those moments where if you overthink something, it kind of doesn't have the outcome you want. In Beijing, I made it to the trials, but then I got injured. I made it 100 meters and I partially tore my Achilles, but I didn't let that get me down. I still went to closing ceremonies. I still stayed in the village with a bunch of the athletes. I climbed the Great Wall of China. I rode a bicycle all around Beijing, and still made the most of my Olympic experience there. When did I know I wanted to be Olympian? So this is a true story. When I was in 7th grade, I was one of the fastest kids in our school, and we would do these fitness tests. And it was, I think you had to do 4 laps to actually complete the fitness test, and I was lapping all of the kids in our school. And so one of our gym teachers says, wow, you're going to be as fast as Mary Decker-Slaney. And I had no idea who that was. So when I, found a book to look her up, because in the 80s, we did not have internet. Kids, can you imagine that? Not having the internet? Yeah, I know. That's old school. That's when I thought, okay, there's someone to look up to, and that's going to be one of my goals in life. So that was that one. The hardest obstacle to overcome, just like what Bethany was saying. So the financial commitment. There's a parent down there. So I qualified for 5 Olympic trials, and I was fortunate to make 2 of them, but every Olympic trials is 4 years apart. And so that was from college all the way up till I was 35 years old. And when you're training, just like Bethany said, you're working full time. There's not a lot of money in especially track and field. Working full time, trying to train full time, giving up, family obligations, meeting possibly a person that you want to spend your life with, and that is definitely the financial part was one of the hardest. Kind of the same question, right? The coolest pinch me moment was definitely walking in the closing ceremonies. You can see by this picture that I was with some of my friends. You might recognize 1 or 2 of them. Shalane Flanagan was one of the top Olympic distance runners, and she won the New York Marathon a couple years ago. And some of these women still are in the sport. One's a broadcaster, and one is, I think, a doctor. So I made lifelong friends with the people that I raced with. And one of the next pictures, we got to walk with, you'll see it later, but we got to walk with the basketball dream team. And that was a really cool pinch me moment. The way I've stayed active in my sport is I have been coaching. Yeah, some runners in the house. So I've been active in my sport by coaching. I started coaching right after I retired from running. And when I moved here to Holliston, I started coaching middle school when my kids were in middle school. And then I moved up to the high school, and I'm coaching the boys' high school team. And I didn't even mention that I have 2 kids. I mean, most of you probably might know some of them. So my daughter Lucy is a runner. She's 14 years old. And my son Charlie is a soccer player and just is signed up for track for the first time doing shot put. Yeah, I know, right? And then I also am a runner myself. I ran my first marathon in November and training for more. A piece of advice I would offer you in the room or these kids is to stay positive and stay motivated. And remember that whatever you do in life, it should be for you. It shouldn't be for anybody else. And nobody should push you to do anything you don't want to do. If there's a sport you don't like and someone's pushing you to do it, you should be able to make your own choices, even at the tender little age you're at now. What I meant by this, so what is something about the Olympics that would surprise us? All the athletes stay in the Olympic Village together, and I guess it's not surprising. It does make sense when you're in a different country. Everybody stays together, but what that means is we all eat together. There's the medical staff. You have your own country medical staff, but then you've got the whole Olympic medical staff. You got the food court, which has every different type of food that you can ask for, because there are so many different countries, you have to accommodate all of those. And like Bethany said, McDonald's was the most popular in my experience as well. There was lines out the door to get into, to try and get McDonald's. But we also, it was fun to form friendships. We had pins that we would trade. And I looked for mine and couldn't find them, but I had pins from like almost every country, so that you just kind of met other people from other countries and what you were doing, whether it was track and field or soccer or basketball. We just all milled around together and got to know each other, so that was fun. Is there anything else I'd like to share? So for me, I came from a very small town. My parents didn't have a lot of money. The way I actually got to travel to track meets was by fundraising. My coaches in town, and I lived in a small town in Northern California, my coaches helped fundraise to send me to track meets so that I could get faster and better experience for racing. And without that, I wouldn't have become an Olympian. Without the coaches in my life, there's no way that I would have had the ability to make 2 Olympic teams. And that last picture was my last coach, who also coached my husband. He's 93 years old, and I just saw him last weekend. Yeah, so lifelong like friend and basically family member. Thank you all for coming. I'll pass it over.
Hi guys. I'm the last one, so you don't have to. I'm just gonna let you push the buttons. I go by Gevvie. My parents name me Genevra, which I have never gone by except for when I'm in trouble. But I competed in the 12, 16, 20. Technically, they're called the 2020 Olympics, but they were held in 2021 because of COVID. And I raced in 2 different events. So rowing is in a boat with oars. And when you learn to row, you're usually in a boat with other people. You're either in a 4 or an 8. And that's what I rode. In high school, I rode a 4. And in college, I rode an 8. And then I was on the development team because things went well in college. And I was in an 8 and then in a quad. And so you might think, wait, a 4 and a quad, those are kind of the same number. But in a 4, each person holds 1 oar. So in a boat, you have 4 people, each person has 1 really big oar. They're about 9 feet tall. And you kind of lean to one side so the boat goes straight. So you need 2 oars on each side. And in a quad, you each hold 2 oars. So the boat's much easier to go straight. And you have 8 oars, and they're a little bit smaller. They're narrower, and they're about 7 feet tall. And so I switched to what's called sculling, when you hold 2 oars after college, because I'm a little bit on the small side for a rower, which might be hard to believe because I'm 6 feet tall, but I'm on the small side for a rower. And the national team coach said, you're not big enough to make it in an 8. I would switch if I were you. So I switched to sculling. I tried out for, like Nicole, I tried out for teams that I didn't make. I tried out for the Beijing team after college, for the quad, and did not make it. So I came to Boston to go to med school, and there aren't very many people rowing at that level in Boston. The team mostly trains in Princeton, New Jersey. And so without anyone else to row with, I said, hey, I guess I'll row the single, because it's only me. And I only needed 1 person to row a single. And so I started training on my own and became the fastest person in the country that way. So I raced the single in London, finishing 7th. Unlike track and field, one of the special things about rowing is that you get to race a final no matter what. So everyone has your heat, and the top bunch advance to the quarterfinals. And in the quarterfinals, there's 6 lanes. The top 3 advance to semifinal A, B, but the bottom 3 actually go to semifinal C, D. And then from the semifinals, the top 3 go to final A, and the bottom 3 go to final B. So I made the semifinals, but then you get to race a final B, which is really nice because you get to kind of finish out and everyone gets a marking. One of the reasons is because at the Olympics, the top 8 participants get a really special certificate. And that's because in track and field and swimming, there are 8 lanes. And because in all the field sports, that's making the quarterfinals. So basketball, soccer, all those things. So 8 is kind of this number they've decided is really special. And in rowing, because you have 6 lanes, there's no way else to determine the top 8 unless you hold a B final. It's also traditional at our World Championships, our World Cups, we race the whole way down, everyone gets their finish. And so I raced the B final, and it actually ended up being really special because I got to win it, and it's a lot more fun to cross the line in first than in last. So even though I was 7th, not 6th, it was way more fun. And I had a great race, and I came back to Boston, and I ended up going again in Rio. Because at that Olympics in London, a lot of international coaches had come to my dad. I thought, I made the Olympics, I'm done. And a bunch of coaches went up to my dad, who was my coach, and said, Gevvie could be on the podium. And I was like, no way. I made my dream. I was in the Olympics. This is the best thing ever. I finished 7th. That's the best I've ever done. I had the best race of my life. I'm done. But that kind of kept nagging me, kind of in the back of my head, like, oh, could I really be faster? Could I really make the podium? So I had been in medical school. I took another leave of absence, and tried out for Rio. Ended up finishing second at Rio, and I have my medal here, and that was in the single as well. And then I went to talk to a bunch of kids like you after Rio, and one of them said, well, if you're still getting faster and you're still having fun, why are you stopping? And I said, that's a really good question. I don't have an answer to that. And so I did, again, take a leave from my other stuff that was going on in my life and raced in Tokyo. I did not make the single that time. I was second at single trials, but I ended up racing the double and finishing fifth. How many of you guys watched the Olympics in Italy this year? Yeah. And the opening ceremonies was always really cool. Well, in Norway in 1994, they had a torchlight parade down a mountain. And I remember seeing the opening ceremonies, all these skiers skiing down with their torches and thinking, that is the coolest thing ever. I want to go to the Olympics. And I was figure skated at the time. I think I was in second or third grade. And I was not a good figure skater. I'm tall and gangly and klutzy, but I thought it was really cool and I wanted to be a figure skater. That didn't happen, but fast forward a lot of years, I had started rowing and I was in college, and a bunch of my friends had been at the Junior World Championships and said, oh my gosh, I want to be Olympian in locker room one day. And I was like, oh, I want to do that too. I guess this is going to be really hard. I'm not the only one who wants to be an Olympian. But it is hard because a lot of people want to do it, but it's totally worth it. So that picture on the screen there is actually from just when I crossed the line in Rio and won my silver medal. Just like has been said, it's really hard to get to the Olympics and things don't always go your way. So in 2008, when I didn't make the team, I thought I wasn't good enough and I had moved on to other stages of my life. And even on the way to London and the way to Rio, in London, I made the team for the World Cups and then didn't make it for the World Championship. And then I made it for the World Championship the next year, but I didn't qualify for the Olympics because not every country gets to go to the Olympics. You have to place a certain ranking. And so I didn't place high enough, and so I had to go to what's called the Last Chance Regatta. And it's up and it's down. It's not all wins. You have your losses too. And every time you have a loss, you think, am I good enough? Can I do this? And it takes your inner voice saying, I can do this, to do it. And it helps to have a supportive community around you. To have parents and friends saying, yes, you can do it. Similar things. So I took a leave of med school 3 times, or residency once, but it takes a lot longer to get to your career and have a family and make money when you're doing this thing that is taking you around the world. Didn't go to a lot of weddings, didn't go to any bachelorette parties, which granted turns out to be a win, I think. But yeah, you miss a lot of things, but you also gain a lot of things. So like I missed a lot of weddings from my friends that were here, who I'm still close with, but I also made a lot of really important friends who were the people I raced against, who were my competitors. And I got to train in Spain with the Irish team and in Austria with the Austrian team. And those friends are still friends that I keep in touch with. So you lose some and you gain some. This is very cliche, which means very typical, but being on the podium is the best experience of my life. And it was funny because people frequently when you're young say getting married is going to be the best day of your life. And that day, people came up to me and they're like, getting married is not going to hold a candle to this. Like, just expect it. Which is true, I would say. But there's really something special about when you've worked for something for so long. Like at this point, I had been rowing for 15 years. So it's a really long time. And I had wins and losses and just it spent so much time, so many minutes, so many hours doing the same motion over and over. Rowing is a very simple motion. You put your blade in, you push your legs, you pull your blade out. You do the same thing over and over and over, hundreds and thousands of times in a practice. And for all that hard work to end up in something you dreamed about since you were 7 is really cool. My coach actually was there too from college, which was really special. My family was there. My dad was my coach for the moment, so yeah. It's incredible. And yes, I still get to row. So I actually live in Newton, not Holliston, which is really close to the Charles River. And there's a big race every fall called the Head of the Charles. And there are a lot of colleges. So Northeastern, Harvard, BU, MIT, Wellesley, Simmons all row on the Charles River, along with a lot of high schools and a lot of old people. In my boat club, we have people who are 90 who are still rowing most every day. Yeah. And so I still go out and have fun rowing. And actually, when I was training in Boston, I was a girl, and girls are slower than guys, just unfortunately by the nature of genetics and physiology. But the people I trained against were masters men in my boat club. So they were people who had been on the U.S. team in the 80s and 90s, who then would get in a boat and race against me as a girl. And so they were fast men racing against a fast girl, and they made things fun, but I still get to row with them, which is really great. Oh yeah, and so I also am a doctor now, and I'm going to Junior Worlds as the team doctor this year. And I've also gotten in touch with other sports via that. So actually, because of the rowing stuff, I'm actually one of the team doctors for US Biathlon now. This I think it's so much harder to work hard when you have fun. Like you guys know, it's probably more fun to do your homework for the subjects you like than the subjects you don't like. So when you like something, it's easier to spend time doing it and to work hard at it. And as crazy as it is for all of us, I mean, we all did repetitive sports, but we found the fun in it. And I think that's finding teammates that make it fun, and then enjoying the everyday, even if it's repetitive. I really like being on the water, so even though the stroke is repetitive, I get to be outside on the river, which is beautiful and really fun. So unlike Bethany, I did not get to walk in opening ceremonies ever, because I raced the next day, every time. And a lot of sports do compete the next day, and so they don't actually go to opening ceremonies, because when you go, it's a lot of time standing on your feet. So it can be hot in the summer, it can be like 80 or 90 degrees, and you're standing up for 4 to 5 hours without a chance to sit down. They don't give you water because of security. You don't get dinner. And so if you have the most important competition of your life coming the next day, you're like, nah, maybe I won't do that. Maybe I'll go to bed on time. So I have watched the first half of the opening ceremonies on TV from each Olympics and then gone to bed. And so I never got to walk in opening ceremonies, even though that's like the part that inspired me to be an Olympian. I did do closing ceremonies twice. And then the dining hall is really cool. I had a picture that has all like the gymnasts and the rowers. Oh, is it next? Okay. But everyone's in the dining hall, and you get to see all the shapes and sizes, different sports. Being a different shape and size is kind of what your muscles do, but also what makes you good at that sport. So the gymnasts are under 5 feet, and the basketball players are 8 feet, and you have the wrestler, like the weightlifters who are huge, and you have the track and field athletes, or the speed walkers, actually, are worse than the track and field athletes. They're tiny. The equestrians are old, relatively, they're like 50. The gymnasts are like 15. So it's everyone, but everyone's the best in your sport, and you see this diversity from all over the world, and it's awesome. Yeah, and I already talked about the other thing. Yeah. And then this is the dining hall. There's some more pictures. So it's as big as, I think, 2 football fields. So it's really big. So you can barely see the end of the dining hall in this picture. You can see a bunch of different waste bins because they've gotten trying to be good about the environment. So you have your recycling, you have your compost, you have your trash, you have your clear recycling. And this one, I think, is from COVID. So you can actually see clear plexiglass screens separating each seat, because they didn't want us to spread our germs when we were eating and our masks off. Oh, yeah, it was weird. And these pictures, so the US team, we were actually the first team to arrive in Japan, so we got to be the only people in the dining hall for the first 12 hours, 24 hours. And so a lot of the stalls were actually shut, but it shows like there's Italian food, pizza and pasta, there's Japanese food, they had a ton of soba noodles and sushi, and then they have Middle Eastern food, they have halal food, they have American grill food. They have British food in a separate station. It's crazy. And here's a picture of me standing next to the Chinese gymnasts. So I'm not even as big as a male basketball player, and there's a big height difference there. That's it. Thanks, guys, for coming. And Sara for organizing.
Yes, Bethany, do you want to come up here? You want to say your name and your question?
I'm Aaron. Did you try a Japanese cheeseburger?
I personally did not try it.
Oh.
I was in Japan. They were not offering Japanese cheeseburgers.
So McDonald's is no longer at the Olympics. It's no longer a sponsor. I know. Yes, European. So I would say, so in London, the McDonald's was in the dining hall. At Rio, they had a McDonald's on the far edge of the Olympic Village, which is huge. It's like a mile that you could go to walk to get your McDonald's. It had a crazy line. And then at Tokyo, McDonald's was gone. Yeah. Also, while we do this, I'm going to pass around my medal so you guys can hold it and take pictures with it if you want.
Daniel, you have a question? What? Do you want to come up?
Yes.
Yeah, you can hear. Go ahead, buddy.
You got to bring it back and pass it around.
Oh, can I do it?
And we're going to pass it around.
My name is Daniel, and how long did it take to do all of this?
Like the training and stuff? Yeah, your whole journey.
So for just the Olympic part, it was for me after college, so that would have been in 2000, and then my last Olympic trials, I blew my Achilles out that ended my Olympic career for 2010 in Vancouver. So 10 years for me post-college.
My first Olympic trials was in 1996, and my last one was in 2008.
And I started rowing in 2001, and my last Olympics was in 2021, so 20 years. But my first team that I tried to make was in 2008, which really means you start training in 2007 for me, because I graduated from college, so 14 years.
Good question. Who else?
I'm Vivian. How long did it take to get to the finish line?
That's a good question. Very different for our different races.
Too long.
So the sport of bobsledding, the push that I was involved in was 6 seconds, and then there's a driver who gets you down, and the race in total, I think most tracks are about a mile long, and you can hit up to 80 to 90 miles an hour at your fastest, and it feels like you're rolling down a hill in a trash can, is the best way I could describe it. And it's about 60 seconds, about a minute.
My event was 800, which is 2 laps around a track, and it took me just under 2 minutes, so 1:57.
And I got to race for much longer. So the world record for women's single is 7:07, and usually because of conditions, it's a little bit slower than that. So it's around 7 minutes and 15 seconds.
How much did this take to the finish line?
Yes.
Same question, yeah.
1 minute. You gotta count to 60 and it's over.
Mine was 2 minutes.
And I got 7 minutes to race, 4 times.
How long was yours, Gevvie? How long, bro?
2,000 meters, it's a mile and a quarter. Although, fun fact for everyone. So rowing has raced 2,000 meters since the Olympics were first introduced, again, in like 1896. I think it was the first modern Olympics. Every race we ever do is 2,000 meters, but in LA we're racing 1,500 meters because the lake that they want to hold it on is not longer. So, a lot of angry rowers out there.
Who else has a question? Any grown-ups? Anything you've ever wanted to know?
Hi, my name's Kennedy, and my question is, what was the first country you competed in?
That's a good question.
That's a really good question. I think it might have been, I'm trying to think back. So my first year in the sport was in 2001, 2002. And I remember flying to Europe. I think we were in Germany. Was the first country outside of the US that I competed in.
So apart from Olympics, the first country I ever competed in was Canada.
The first country I competed in racing for the U.S., because Canada, rowing, you go to Canada a decent amount, as like a junior rower. But for the U.S., the first country I competed in was Belgium.
I would love to know how your Olympic experience has influenced you as moms.
Being a parent is by far the hardest thing I've ever done. When you're training for a sport, it's really, you're doing it for you. Everything you do is, for me, revolved around my training and sport. Every decision I made, and as a parent, you have other human beings to consider in your day-to-day. And it takes a lot of effort and care to want to raise humans that can be independent, driven citizens in the world. So I think it's helped me in terms of just my thought and organization. It's really interesting the perspective I have on sport as a parent, and allowing my kids to make the choices for their sport. One perspective as an alternate, I know sometimes a lot of parents, if their kids don't get a position they want, they move them to a new team. If their kids aren't playing as much, they move them to a new team. I think there's a lot to be said for understanding that you play a part no matter what sport you play, no matter who you are in that sport, no matter what position you have, whether you sit on the bench and never get any play time, you impact everyone else's journey and your own, and we all play a special part in that. So I didn't get to race at the Olympics, I didn't earn a medal at the Olympics, but being an alternate and supporting my teammates and all of that goes into it is a really special thing to be able to do. And so I take that perspective with my kids, no matter what, whether it's sports, music, art, whatever it is, I just want them to have that grit, determination, dedication, perseverance. So I come through that lens as a parent, which is what sport taught me.
I think this is a hard question. I'm not sure how my sport prepared me to be a parent, but I do know from my own experience, I do parent in a different way, I think. My number one goal when I coach or for my kids is whatever you do, you should be having fun. You should be having fun and you should be finding joy in what you do. So I'm never going to be a parent or a coach that would force somebody to do something. And if it was hard or if they didn't like it or if it was, just too much, I'm more apt to be more protective of my kids than I would have been for myself, because I would sacrifice, my own foot to try and make an Olympic team, but I wouldn't do that for my kids. My kids, I just want them to be having fun, and my daughter's actually here now, who's a runner, and I want her to have fun, and I don't think she cares, that I made an Olympic team. I think it's more she just needs to follow her own journey, and I'm here as her guide, and more of a positive influence than anything else.
Yeah, I have a toddler, so it's a little different. He's definitely not playing sports yet. But I think that the thing that I have, it's the repetitive and the persistence that you get used to doing the same things over and over, and it's okay repeating the same things over and over to a toddler because you just still believe that at some point it'll go through. But yeah, so it's very different. When you're training full time, you can be so selfish, and you're sleeping, and you're eating, and you're thinking about your hydration, and you're stretching, and I'm like, when's the last time I stretched? And sometimes I haven't drunk water because it's very different because you're thinking about your own body all the time when you're training, and you never think about it as a parent. You don't have time.
Thank you. Yes.
How do the bobsled and the boat travel around?
So bobsleds weigh about 400 pounds. So from just the logistical perspective, when we're at races, there's runners that are metal, and you don't want them to touch the ground because they get scratched. And actually, we have to sand them for hours getting ready for races. And then there's boards that you put on them, and then the athletes, we have to lift them and put them on trucks that bring them from the top of the track to the bottom. And then to get them into, we have to then put them into, have you ever seen they're huge cargo containers. They're these big metal containers. We have to load the sleds in there and then pack all our stuff in there, and then a truck comes and they ship them overseas on a big boat.
So rowing shells are much lighter. They only weigh 27 pounds, so I can carry one by myself, a single, that is. But they're really long. They're almost 30 feet. And so they fit on top of a car, a single does. So I put a cover for my boat, and I put it upside down on top of my car on a rack. But when they go overseas, they also have to go in a big container. And in fact, in Europe, trucks have to be shorter. Those are the regulations. And so the 8s, which are much longer because they fit 8 people, have to be cut in half. Well, they're not in half. It's technically 2/3 and 1/3, but they have to be in 2 parts to travel around on the trailers. So when you get to a different country, the athletes in the 8 have to reassemble their boat.
Hi, I actually don't have a question, lucky for you, Nicole Downin. But I just wanted to say that not only are you all very well accomplished, but very well spoken and very personable. And I find that this was very inspiring today, and I wanted to thank you all for taking the time to talk to all of us about your experiences.
How long does it take you a night? Do you have to row to a night?
Do you ever row at night?
I don't usually row at night. I do row in the dark sometimes because sometimes the sun doesn't come up until really late in the morning, and rowers usually row really early. So sometimes I'm launching at 6 in the morning, which is really dark, and so I have lights for my boat that go on the front and the back of the boat, so it's safe so people can see you in the dark. I don't really get scared because I'm on a river, which is safe, but I do get a little bit seasick sometimes because it's kind of, you're not aware of where the horizon is when it's dark, and so it's just like a little bit I don't know, like being in a car or on a boat. Normally I would never get seasick, but in the dark occasionally I'm like, oh.
That's so surprising. Yeah, if Gevvie don't get seasick, I don't feel so bad. Yeah, that makes sense, yeah. Yes, another question.
Do you have a Zamboni at the bobsled ice rink?
Oh, a Zamboni.
So there's not a Zamboni, but so the track, it goes like sideways and flat, and they have track workers that have all different pieces of equipment, and then they'll have a bucket with water or slush in it. So sometimes if the sleds like scrape the track, then they're in there fixing it and using different tools to smooth it out. And then they spray it with water to get the ice on there.
Go ahead.
Emma, did you have a Zamboni?
No Zambonis. It would be pretty cool though. That's a great idea.
My question is, do any of you have any superstitions or any weird things you have to do before each?
I ate a Snickers bar before I competed. I don't know why. I think I did it once and I had a good result, so I felt like I needed to keep doing it. And actually steak the night before, which I know during Lent you're not supposed to eat meat on Fridays, but I felt God would forgive me for... I'm not a super religious person either. That was in my early days of my career, but yeah, steak the night before and Snickers bar.
I didn't have any superstitions per se, but I like to do the same exact thing, like the night before, eat the same things, and then the day of, take a shower, then get to the event at the same time, and then do the same exact warm-up, have the same food, and sometimes in foreign countries that wasn't necessarily possible, but as much as possible to replicate everything at the same time.
I think having a consistent warm-up becomes more of an aid than a superstition, I would say, because it actually does help you. I began eating ice cream the night before a race in high school, probably. And then my dad actually continued it. He's my coach because they have these big meetings the night before a race, and my dad would say, I don't really have anything to tell you anymore. We've already been through all of this, but everyone else is still meeting, so let's go out and get ice cream. And so we began having ice cream the night before every race, and in France, qualifying for the Olympics in 2015, all the ice cream shops were shut because apparently they close when it's raining in France. If it's bad weather, people don't eat ice cream. And so we walked for a long time finding an ice cream shop that was open. And I actually have to run. I'm sorry. I have toddler duties. So I'm gonna. Has anyone not seen the medal?
All right. Thank you, Gevvie. Gevvie has to run.
Hi, this is Steve Hedrick, and I'm here at Holliston Town Hall with Christian Boudet, and covering the event, our Olympic event, and I'm here with Sara Baroud.
Yep.
And Sara, this was a wonderful event, a great turnout. You had 3 Olympians here. What got you going to do this?
Oh, thanks, Steve. Yeah, this was wonderful. This is a great turnout. I'd say we had about 50 people here, half kids, half adults, which is wonderful. I got to know Bethany, Hart, Gerry. She was one of our Olympians. I got to know her about 5 years ago, and that really sparked a friendship and an interest in who else was in the area. And then I found out we had an Olympian in our neighborhood. I said, we got to spotlight these amazing athletes. So we got Gevvie on board through a friend, and just brought it all together. I'm a lifelong fan of the Olympics, so I just wanted to bring that to Holliston.
Well, that's awesome. I think everybody had a lot of fun here. I was absolutely amazed, all the young kids that were here, and absolutely listened to what was going on. So I think there were some messages that got out to the audience.
Yes, I hope so. And really good questions from the kids, too.
Yes,
Yeah,
yes.
yeah.
And I think also your Olympians had great messages to give. You know, they were all very well spoken, and it was great to hear their story. And, you know, maybe we can get some more Olympians to attend. You know, I'm sure we have more in this area.
We sure do. Anyone that I mentioned this event to over the past few months, they said, oh, is so-and-so coming from Medway or Millis? I said, no, but if you know them, let's get them together. So this could be a repeat performance for sure. We have the setup, we have all the decorations, so let's do it again.
Well, the hall definitely looked nice. You did a fine job with this, and yes, we need to do it again. So that's going to do it here from Holliston Town Hall. Thank you very much for watching.
Thank you.